President Buhari engages National Assembly leaders as appeal to stop NSAS protests intensifies.
The President is to review the situation and see the roles that the two arms of government should play.
He accepted absolutely everything that Nigerians asked for.
Nigerian Army launches Operation Crocodile Smile 6 nationwide.
Include cyber warfare exercises designed to identify, track, and counter negative propaganda.
New police tactical team will be professional and ethical, Inspector General of Police assures Nigerians.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss harsh NSAS protests and the way forward.
First, the protest came with the hashtag #EndSARS, and indeed, the Police Special Anti-Robbery Squad SARS is now defunct, following its dissolution by the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, precisely on the 11th of this month, and the subsequent formation of a Special Weapons and Tactics Team SWAT as replacement for the disbanded SARS.
Well, the protests, which began about 2 weeks ago on Twitter and gradually progressed to the streets, have now gone beyond the simple and one-point clamor of harsh NSAS to wider ramifications, such as a 5-point demand that encompasses critical police reforms as well as justice for all deceased victims of alleged police brutality, plus compensation for their families.
Again, a presidential panel quickly accepted the 5-point demand of the NSAS protesters, and the National Economic Council, chaired by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, directed the immediate establishment of judicial panels of inquiry across the 36 states and the FCT towards ensuring justice for victims of police brutality.
Now, some state governments are already constituting their various judicial panels of inquiry, each of which we understand will include representatives of the youth, students, and civil society organizations, and will be chaired by a retired High Court judge.
The states have also been mandated by the National Economic Council to constitute special security and human rights committees chaired by governors to supervise the newly formed police tactical unit and also establish a victim support fund to facilitate compensation to identified victims of police brutality.
Now, that's blow-by-blow response, no question about that, by the federal government towards addressing the 5-point demand of the protesters. But they have refused to be assuaged. In fact, the harsh NSAS protest is spreading to more cities in the country and even beyond. And the hashtag NSAS now appears to be a metaphor for a wide range of demands and anticipated reforms in the country.
Well, Kingsley, so far, government has largely tolerated the peaceful protests since inception, even with an apology from the Vice President over the weekend on Twitter to persuade the protesting youths to leave the streets, while pledging that government is giving listening ear to their yearnings and aspirations.
But the protesting youths have refused to back down, and in major cities across the country, the protests are impeding businesses and social engagements, causing hardship for ordinary Nigerians, many of whom are already grappling with harsh economic conditions. Now, there are also instances where the protests have turned violent, with reports of peaceful protesters being attacked by opposing groups, feeling apprehension that the harsh NSAS protests could be potentially hijacked by miscreants.
And what steps and measures are required to persuade the protesting youths and get them to leave the streets and allow government action on their demands? Kingsley?
And how can the demands of the protesters be possibly classified and actualized in the immediate, short, and long terms? We shall be having a number of guests on the program this morning to discuss the ramifications of the harsh NSAS protest and the way forward. I'm Kingsley Osadola, and I welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And we're broadcasting from our nation's capital, Abuja.
And I am Yusuf Nadab Usman. The morning news comes in a moment, and other complementary segments shall be served in the course of the program. Ifeoma Ojunta is here for the morning news. Good morning, Ifeoma.
Good morning, Nadabo and Kinsley, and here is the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari has formally engaged presiding officers of the National Assembly towards ensuring that the genuine demands of the NSAS protesters are addressed expeditiously. The meeting, however, expressed worry over the accompanying violence of the protests in parts of the country, saying time has come to give the government a chance to deliver on its promises.
The essence of coming to meet Mr. President is to review the situation and see the roles that the two arms of government should play in ensuring that the demands of the protesters, the 5-point demands, are properly addressed. Where legislative intervention will be required, we are ready to move in and deal with such expeditiously to ensure that we don't waste any time, so that we address the concerns of our youth. Where the executive role is expected.
He gave us a listening ear that the same as he's always given Nigerians for the first time in history. Don't forget his background. He accepted absolutely everything that Nigerians asked for. It's the first time in history that, because I've heard this story that, we've had NSAS, 4 times before in our past, and that's what people are saying. And like I say, this is the first time you haven't heard it from Mr. President.
In the meantime, Osun State government is to set up a judicial panel of inquiry in line with Vice President Oshibajo's directive to investigate all related cases of abuse and brutality by the disbanded SARS and also investigate the death of 2 protesters in Osogbo. Governor Oyetola said this in his statewide broadcast, where he appealed for calm.
Immediately the attack took place and Mr. Governor was hurriedly evacuated from the scene of the incident. Mr. Governor got to the government house at exactly 4:05 p.m.
The Executive Governor of Plateau State, Simon Bakola Long, has approved the appointment of members of the Judicial Panel of Inquiry to investigate complaints of police brutality and related extrajudicial killings in Plateau State, with a view to delivering justice for all victims of the dissolved Special Anti-Robbery Squad and other police units. This is in line with the recommendation of the National Economic Council for the establishment of state-based judicial panels of inquiry by governors to hear complaints and ensure accountability in the operations of police units in their states. The panel is headed by a retired judge of the Plateau State High Court, Justice Philomena Lotz. The committee is expected to carry out its assignment within 6 months and submit its reports. Meanwhile, the Inspector General of Police, IGP Mohammed Adamu, has reaffirmed that the new police tactical team will operate within very high professional and ethical standards, rule of law and dictates of best international policing practices. A statement by the Force Public Relations Officer, DCP Frank Mba, says no personnel of the defunct Special Anti-Robbery Squad will be absorbed into the new tactical team. He notes that officers selected for the training are young, smart and energetic, who have acquired not less than 7 years working experience with clean service records. The IGP seeks the cooperation of citizens in the ongoing development drive for a new and reformed Nigeria Police Force. So the news now, the Nigerian Army has launched a military exercise codenamed Crocodile Smile 6 at the Nigerian Army Super Ngamdu, Borno State. The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Baratai, was on hand to inspect weapons deployed for Operation Crocodile Smile.
The exercise is also planned to include the conduct of cyber security awareness seminars, detect and neutralize malicious posts, fake news, illegal recruitment scam, and internet hackers.
Meanwhile, the Nigerian Army says the Crocodile Smile 6 exercise has nothing to do with the NSAS protests A statement by the Acting Director, Army Public Relations, Colonel Sagir Musa, notes that Exercise Crocodile Smile is a yearly exercise in the Nigerian Army calendar of events which traditionally holds from October to December, stressing that the Army has acted professionally since the civil protest started. And for an update on COVID-19, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control (NCDC) has announced 133 new cases of COVID-19 in 8 states and the FCT. These 133 new cases increased the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Nigeria to 61,440. Of the new cases, Lagos has 90, Rivers 13, FCT and Kaduna recorded 8 cases each, Oyo 6, Ondo 3, Katsina and Nasarawa recorded 2 cases each, while Plateau has just a case this time around. On the list of cases per state, Lagos remains on top with 20,645 cases, followed by FCT with 5,918, while Plateau is third with 3,581 total confirmed cases is 56,611. Recovered patients have been discharged with 1,125 deaths so far. And that's the morning news. The program continues with Kinsley and Nadabo after this break.
The recent genuine concerns and agitations by Nigerians about the excessive use of force and in some cases extrajudicial killings and wrongful conduct by men of the Nigerian police force. The disbanding of SARS is only the first step in our commitment to extensive police reform in order to ensure that the primary duty of the police and other law enforcement agencies remains the protection of lives and livelihoods of our people. We will also ensure that all those responsible for misconduct or wrongful acts are brought to justice. We also deeply regret the loss of life of the young man in Oyo State during the recent demonstrations. I have directed that the circumstances of his death should be thoroughly investigated. Meanwhile, it is important to recognize that the vast majority of men and women of the police force are hardworking and diligent in performing their duties. The few bad eggs should not be allowed to tarnish the image and reputation of the force.
In these uncertain times, one thing's certain. We're in this together. So Clean Protect, the antibacterial detergent that removes 99.9% germs while it cleans. Because germ-free clean is the real clean that we all need. Do your best to protect your family. So Clean Protect.
For over 70 years, we've protected our homes against germs together. And now is no different. So let's disinfect and protect our floors and surfaces every day. Dettol. Protect what's worth fighting for.
Demand demands of #EndSARS movement, immediate release of all arrested protesters, justice for all deceased victims of police brutality and appropriate compensation for their families, setting up an independent body to oversee the investigation and prosecution of all reports of police misconduct within 10 days. In line with the new Police Act, psychological evaluation and retraining to be confirmed by an independent body of all disbanded SARS officers before they can be redeployed. Increase police salary so that they are adequately compensated for protecting the lives and property of citizens. Federal government's response. On 11th October 2020, the Inspector General of Police dissolved the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, across the 36 states police commands and the Federal Capital Territory. On October 12th, President Muhammadu Buhari addressed the nation, stating, "The disbanding of SARS is only the first step in our commitment to extensive police reforms." On 13th October 2020, the Inspector General of Police ordered all defunct SARS personnel to report at Force Headquarters, Abuja, for debriefing as well as psychological and medical examination. On 13th October 2020, the Presidential Panel on the Reform of SARS accepted the 5-point demand of the #EndSARS protesters. On 15th October 2020, the National Economic Council, NEC, directed the immediate establishment of state-based judicial panels of inquiry across the country to receive and investigate complaints of police brutality, related extrajudicial killings with a view to delivering justice for all victims of the dissolved SARS and other police units. State governors should immediately establish state-based special security and human rights committees to be chaired by governors in their states and to supervise the newly formed police tactical units and all other security agencies located in the state. This will ensure the protection of citizens' human rights. Members will also include representatives of youths and civil society as well as head of police tactical units in each of the states.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. Next is business news, and here is our correspondent, Chimobi Walter Nanji.
Harnessing the 1.2 billion market size in Africa is the main target for the floating of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area to boost intra-Africa trade. The Secretary General of the AFCFTA Secretariat, Wamkele Mene, says the Secretariat is working towards establishing centers of excellence across Africa to boost production capacity in the continent and enhance Africa's readiness for a global competitiveness through high-tech product manufacturing and robust regional value chain development.
So what we envisage is that we will sit together, policymakers, along with government officials and the private sector, and we will have to collectively decide which value chains do we want to focus in and have a very, very clear work plan for implementation of those value chains.
Meanwhile, the capital market inched up by 1.1% at the close of market Friday, 16th October 2020. Some analysts predict mixed sentiments in the market for this week. With business news, I'm Chimobi Walter Naji.
Many thanks, Chimobi, for the business package. Next on the program is newspaper review.
All right, our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Tobi, is right here with us this morning. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, Yusuf.
Good morning,
Good
Bayo.
morning, Nigeria.
Yeah.
All right, we have just one newspaper for review this morning. It's The Nation, and from which we also take the editorial. The lead story on the front page of The Nation newspaper says, protesters halt activities in Abuja, Lagos, and others. And you have a number of writers to that headline. It says, Buhari meets Lawan and Gbajabiamila. Governors and Senate President, let's end protest. Blockade in Agodi, Ibadan. Traffic disrupted in Abuja. Benin under total lockdown and has NSAS leader Segalink withdraws. And you see the photograph on the front page there of some of the protest scenes at the Central Bank office, headquarters in Abuja yesterday, and also at the entrance of the Lagos State House of Assembly, and then by protesters on the Ekehua Barracks Road in Benin yesterday. That's where you have the bonfire there. Now, inside the paper, you also have the following headlines by way of writers. Thugs pre-planned attack on me, says Osun governor. Protesters launch online radio, and government won't tolerate anarchy. NECO to reschedule exams. And as I said, those stories are in greater detail inside. Audit report indicts 265 federal agencies on 9.7 billion naira unaccounted fund. That's page 7. Let's move up a bit again, above the nameplate this time. You see, Petrol Union, 2.556 billion pound case for Supreme Court hearing. Police parade 242 crime suspects in Kano, weapons recovered. That's page 6. And investors stake 51.9 billion naira on 3 top-tier banks. Minister, Nigeria targets end to steel import by 2025. And below the nameplate says businesses lose 10 billion naira daily to end SARS protests, say experts. Magu fought salami panel on assets verification. Page 7, and still on page 7, tributes to Gawan at 86. Bayo.
Right. Oh, well, Bayo, we have one paper and then an editorial. Maybe we can get to hear from you first before we get into the editorial.
Well, yes, actually, most of the topics relate to the protest. And protests demanding the banning of special anti-robbery squad have continued in many state capitals. In Lagos, the Ekpe toll gate was barricaded, so also was the Lagos Airport toll gate. Lagos-Ibadan Expressway was also blocked. There has been incidences of violence, regrettably. This one took place in front of the Lagos State House of Assembly. In Benin, a young man, Eponwosa, was killed around Ring Road. In Abuja, protesters commenced their procession from the fountain, Unity Fountain, and they blocked Dantata Bridge Friday afternoon. About 1:15 p.m., they conducted their Juma prayers on the highway and also constituted a blockage for citizens to pass. They moved to the Umar Musa Yaradua Express Highway, and that roadway was blocked completely. Workers who were returning from work could not get home. Some had to eventually make a detour because there was a tailback from the CCE structure there along the airport road up to behind the stadium. Vehicles has converged and nobody could move forward. So some had to make a detour. Some of the citizens who live along the airport road, some did not get home until 3 a.m. The irony of it all is that the protesters are challenging impunity by the police, which have led to so many extrajudicial killings, for which every members of the public are supporting them. However,
and which of course have been addressed,
yes,
been addressed anyway.
However, these same members of the public suffer the same impunity from the protesters. They've closed from work, supporting them, but they couldn't get home because they have blocked all the highway. In Ekiti and Osun states, the governors came under attack. Governor of Osun states, in the broadcast to the people, said that, well, the attack on him was not by the protesters, but by political thugs that are apparently infiltrated the rank and file of the protesters. Minister of Information says government will not fold his hands and watch the nation descend into anarchy. He says protesters have the protest has been hijacked by persons with other ulterior motive, and government will have to take firm steps to protect the lives and livelihoods of Nigerians. There's a Nigerian youth organization that has called on protesters to wait and depend on constructive dialogue. Their leader, Ambassador Abdullahi Wali, warn that the prospect of degenerating into anarchy is very high. There's another Sahid Bako who leads the youths in Kaduna. They are demanding an end to insecurity in the north, especially incessant killing, banditry, and insurgency. Some states, Borno and Niger states, while proclaiming their support for the reform of the disbanded SARS, are actually saying that not all members of SARS are bad. Some of them were very good and have helped them fight violent crimes. And therefore, you should not throw the baby away with the bathwater, as Governor Solomon Lalong says. National Human Rights Commission, for now, has been taking some action. Former Supreme Court Justice Suleiman Galadima, has now been named as the chairman of an investigative panel into the activities of SARS. Some states, Lagos and Kaduna, have also named investigative panels. Kaduna has named a judicial panel on police brutality headed by retired Justice David Uyom, and 7 members of this include an AIG and civil society organizations. Meanwhile, the leadership of National Assembly also met with President Muhammadu Buhari on the ongoing protest to end SARS and police brutality. Senate President Ahmed Lawan enjoined protesting youth that it was time to stop their protests and to give government time to amend some of the items they have identified. He says protesters have expressed their legitimate right. They now should wait for government to act fast. Speaker Badabia Mila also said that the executive and legislature do have a role to play in seeking a solution. He says that if they discover nothing has been done, he called on them to suspend their strike for at least 2 weeks. And if they discover that nothing has been done, then they can resume their strike, their protest. He enjoined the youth to give the president a chance. After all, he was the one who gave the directive that SARS should be scrapped.
And that's really a good idea there, giving out...
This is the first time such is coming. This time it's not from the IGP, it's coming from the Commander-in-Chief.
Yeah, sure. Then let's look at the editorial here, which is talking about something different. And that's, it's from The Nation. It says, getting better or getting better, that is. Nigeria will be on course if general elections are conducted like the off-season polls in Edo and Ondo states. That's talking about something different. And it says further, with the police and other security agencies not having sufficient numbers to cover all terrains in general elections, as was the case in Edo and Ondo polls, it is imperative that the political class imbibe civility, a standard culture, while voters must always resist abuses like vote trading.
Well, the editorial is happening on the fact that there has been tremendous success in the Edo election of September 19th and Ondo election of October 10th. And going forward, this should be carried to the general elections of 2023. But the editorial is happening on the fact that while the police were able to muster about 31,000 policemen to take control of that of Edo and 33,000 for Ondo, it might be very challenging to have sufficient policemen to muster the presence when there is a general election, which is the whole nation becomes the constituency for that general election. They have, however, enjoined on politicians to build on the level of credibility that has been achieved from these 2 elections and carry it forward into the general election. They have also commended INEC to say that the INEC RREV, the mode for which polling unit results are uploaded on the portal, has gone a long way to lend credence to the elections. And therefore, they should work hard on that and go a long way. And hoping that in the general election, INEC, the police, and the politicians will all be able to live up to expectation to give the nation the free, fair, and credible election that is required.
That's some good news, really, if at all, or at least INEC will do the needful as such, and indeed all stakeholders. Well, thank you so much, Bayo, for that newspaper review. And
thank you, too.
Looking forward to more of such. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll be back after this break. Stay with us.
Yes, that's the painful effect of what corruption costs you. But what does corruption cost us all? Watch Bad Guys on NTA Network, 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. every Wednesday from the Akin Fadeyi Foundation. Bad Guys. Who are the bad guys? Join us.
Do you desire to upscale your skills and capacities for better productivity? Then you need to attend the following courses organized by NTA TV College, Jos. Photojournalism and Photography, date 19th to 30th October 2020. English Grammar and Pronunciation for Broadcasters, date 26th October to 20th November 2020. Protocol Event Management and Public Relations, date 2nd to 13th November 2020. Intermediate Camera Operation Techniques, date 2nd to 13th November 2020. Intermediate Online News Reporting Skills, date 16th to 27th November 2020. The course fee for the 4-week course is 100,000 naira per participant, while the fee for other courses is 80,000 naira only, accommodation inclusive. Venue for all courses is the serene and secure environment of NTA Television College, near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. For more inquiries, please call 0803-314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College, Jos, training you to be the best you want to be.
You can choose to do this with your stew, but not your data. Get more out of life with the new Airtel data plans. Dial *141# today. Data is life.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Guess what?
What?
I scored a hat trick today.
Cool!
Wow!
And how did you celebrate?
Just do your hands like this.
And hold your nose like this.
Body odor is caused by germs. That's why you need the new improved Dettol Cool Soap, which protects against 99.9% odor-causing germs with an extra burst of menthol freshness. Dettol, be 100% sure.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, as a prompt for our conversation this morning, which is on the way forward for the #EndSARS protest, let's listen to this background now, put together by our correspondent, Abdusalam Jibril.
For almost 2 weeks now, the #EndSARS protesters have been on the streets, with the movement spreading to more cities within and outside the country. The protesters, who are mostly youths, speaking out against alleged brutality and extortion by the now defunct Special Anti-Robbery Squad SARS, a tactical unit of the Nigerian police force. What initially started with one simple demand of ending SARS is now growing to include other agitations. Among their agitations, the protesters are demanding for the immediate release of all arrested protesters, justice for all deceased victims of the protest, and compensation for their families. They also insist on the setting up of an independent body to compile and investigate all reports of police misconduct and also increase police salary so that they are adequately compensated for protecting the lives and properties of Nigerians. In response to these demands from the onset, the Inspector General of Police dissolved SARS across the 36 states of the Federation, including the Federal Capital Territory, and President Muhammadu Buhari said this was a first step in the administration's avowed commitment to extensive police reforms.
The disbanding of SARS is only the first step in our commitment to extensive police reform in order to ensure that the primary duty of the police and other law enforcement agencies remains the protection of lives and livelihoods of our people.
Thereafter, the National Economic Council, chaired by the Vice President, directed the immediate establishment of state-based judicial panels of inquiry across the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory towards ensuring that justice is served. Each of the 37 panels will include representatives of youths, students, and civil society organizations, and to be chaired by a retired state high court judge of repute. Other responses include state governors establishing state-based special security and human rights committee to supervise the newly formed police tactical unit, and governors to establish a victim support fund to enable the payment of monetary compensation to deserving victims, among others. While the demands of the protesters have largely been met by the federal government, the protests have continued unabated. The government have accommodated the peaceful protests since its inception, but there are already indications that the protests might turn violent or potentially hijacked by undesirable elements. How can the immediate and remote issues be addressed to assuage the youth? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will give their perspectives in a moment.
Sure, Abdusalam there talking about, NSAS protests and the way forward. This Good Morning Nigeria, we're reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And to do justice to this topic, we have in the studio Honorable Farouk Aliyu Adamu, former member, House of Representatives. Many thanks for joining us, Farouk.
Good morning.
Also in the studio is Dr. Rauf Zakariaou of the Department of Political Science, Nigerian Police Academy. You're welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right, and then we have two other guests who are regulars on Good Morning Nigeria, usually when we are discussing security issues. Let's welcome Dr. Kabiru Adamu, a security risk management expert. Dr. Adamu, delighted to have you with us this morning.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning.
And joining us via Zoom from Lagos is another security expert and a regular, Dr. Ona Ekwamo. Dr. Ekwamo, pleasure to have you this morning.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kingsley.
All right, gentlemen, let's begin with Dr. Kabiru Adamu. What started out as a simple, if you like, single demand, #EndSARS, is now blossoming into dimensions that are difficult to immediately grasp. What's your reading of what's playing out now, 2 weeks or so into the protests by youths in different parts of the country?
It's not uncommon for social movements to have a life cycle, as it were. Sometimes they will start with a clear demand, and then as they metamorphose, other demands would creep into the movement. Historically, I mean, the most recent example I'll give is the Michael Floyd protest in
George Floyd,
in the U.S. that metamorphosed into the Black Lives Matters movement. From the U.S., it went as far as almost all the continents across the world. So that's not uncommon. Then you have also instances where social movements, protests come out with just one demand, and then the demand is met, and they demobilize, as it were. The best example I can give is the situation in Egypt in 2011, when they came out and demanded for a change in government, and then that happened, and they went back home. So it's a mix of things. In the case of the EndSARS movement, the mobilization started on social media, of course, with the #EndSARS tag. Of course, over time, they would come out, make demands, and then this most recent one seemed to have generated a bit longer than the previous one. And there could be reasons for that. One of them is that the obvious demand has been EndSARS, but then ingrained in that obvious demand, there seem to be several other demands. Some of the narrative out there is that it's a political demand, that perhaps others have hidden under the obvious demand, which is the NSAS movement, and that there is, in the ultimate, a political demand, which could come one of two things: regime change, or, like some have said, the cry for restructuring. That ultimately that is what the movement will metamorphose. Then there is also the possibility that, unfortunately, criminals would have crept into some aspects of the movement, and that they are using it to benefit from it. As a good example is, some people are generating revenue from, or money as it were, maliciously from the movement under a lot of claims. And then, of course, there is the perspective that says it's a social movement that wants change, and that those change are genuine. Those who are behind that theory suggest that there are between 40 and 70 million Nigerian youths that are either unemployed, underemployed, or that are disenchanted for one reason or the other. And so they have rallied around this harsh NSAS tag, and they are venting their frustration and anger. Unfortunately, when I sit on this side as a specialist, as an expert, I see a lot of progress that has been made that unfortunately seem to be lost on all of these three perspectives that I have mentioned.
We will really talk about the progress much later in the program.
Awesome.
Honorable Farouk Aliyu, former minority leader, House of Representatives, this thing playing out. What do you make out of it?
Well, first of all, I think most Nigerians identify with the protest in such a way that, yes, there's been police brutality in this country. There has been so many issues associated with the police. But are all the policemen bad? No. Are policemen necessary? Yes. Should the government do something better? Yes. So in such kind of thing, we as Nigerians, most of us agree with what is happening. But what most Nigerians don't agree is the fact that roads will be blocked. No matter how much, these kids have the right to protest, and we identify with them. But the way they have the right to protest, other Nigerians have also right of free passage. You cannot block the road in the name of demonstration. We understand, and the government has yielded to the demands. So I think it is also only fair that they chill, they wait a little and see whether the government could, actualize these things. And then look, you find out that some of the kids, even their mode of dressing, is not part of our culture in this country as Muslims and Christians. Some of the things they show, in the protest, those things are not, are not good for us as a people. So I think it is also good for us as a country to rally around all of us. Who is government? All of us are government. Whether the government is making mistakes, yes, there are mistakes, and and the government for the first time has admitted that, yes, there are issues. And we have to be civil. Being civil, the government came out to say that they will set up panels. And as long as we are going to be civil, there must be, the people must give time to the government and probably hold the government accountable after some time. If the government does not seem to be serious, then we can all come out. Everybody can come out. But in such a time when you block road, you put one demand, it's met, you put another, and just like what Dr. Kabir said, yes, we that are politicians think that there are political undertones. And look, we are operating politics, constitutional democracy. There are ways to change government. If you're not happy with this government, wait when the time comes to remove the government, put another one. But the elites in this country should understand that, look, even if the elites are behind the trouble, when trouble starts, it will consume all of us. Should we allow this thing to generate into anarchy? Should we, look at what happened to Ogun State government, Osun State governor. And this government, no matter what anybody says, has exercised restraint, civility, allowing the people to demonstrate, to vent their spleen, to abuse people, and do all sorts of things. And I have not seen anywhere that the police have gone to break this demonstration. Now, they should also know that, look, you cannot also continue to block road. You cannot continue to abuse people just because you want your demands to be met. So I think the government should be responsive. The government should also try to look into these demands immediately so that the people will have confidence that, yes, the government is doing something.
All right. Thank you, Honorable Ali. We'll return to you. Let's bring in now Dr. Zachary Yao of the Department of Political Science at the Police Academy. Dr. Zachary Yao, what is your reading of the escalating demands by the protesters?
Yeah, thank you. Well, when you look at the beginning of the protest, today is the 13th day. And in any democratic arrangement, such protests, such agitations are expected. And I think the youth, they have done well by trying to make their demands clear. And the issue of 5 for 5, because they actually came up with 5 conditions, which the government has actually met. So we have passed the stage of 5 for 5. But in a situation whereby it is believed that NSAS has been hijacked, or to some extent there are underpinning agitations coming under the umbrella of NSAS, I think that might not be civil enough, like what Honorable just said. And we, as a political scientist and from the academic point of view, even if the police is not doing the right thing, based on what we have seen regarding the issue of SARS and some level of police brutality, what we actually need is what we call behavioral revolution. And in political parlance, once there is a revolution in the sense that people want what we call a change in terms of the way we have been doing things, there should be another way around, all in the name of what we call paradigm shift. Now, the protest has been ongoing for like 12 to 13 days, but barricading, highway, denying some other legitimate Nigerians to have access to their businesses, to have access to their offices, I think this is uncalled for, because there is nowhere anywhere in the world that you want to do policing without considering the fact that we have to be democratic in whatever we are doing. And our policemen, to some extent, they have tried to curtail the violence in terms of they have never shown unnecessary affiliation with, oh, we are against you guys, why will you block the road? And for the hoodlums that, based on what we have seen in Abuja, like what happened in Kwara yesterday, the hoodlums believe that why the protest should continue, whereby some of them, particularly the National Union Road Transport Association, that we also have our own livelihood to sustain. You don't need to protest and you are hijacking the survival of others, which I believe is very wrong. So the protesters, the youth, they have spoken very fine, and everybody should be able to actually understand their mindset. But one thing is, when we want the police to change behavior in terms of behavioral revolution, we that we are protesting, the youth, should also have what we call a good character, because the youth remains the leaders of tomorrow. And they should be able to show a behavioral perspective that everybody can say, oh, Nigeria future is very safe. But by trying to hijack the scenario, coming up with all sorts of slogans, like what Honorable just said, I think is uncalled for. And when we are talking of police reform, of course, even the reform of police didn't just start today. It's something that has been ongoing. And when we want to reform, we have to consider one thing, that reform does not happen overnight. Like in Nigeria Police Academy, where I lecture, what actually led to the upgrading of Nigeria Police Academy to an awarding, to a degree awarding institution, was as a sort of part of reformation of police. That if we can catch them young, the younger ones, they have been brought to the system through the academic way, they will be well taught, well mannered, civil in nature, and whatever policing arrangement they are going to be carried out over there, it will be done in a highly democratic way, without necessarily abusing others' rights or their legitimate way of life. So, all in all, The protest, of course, is a very good one. Good one in the sense that it's part of our democratic tenet that people can protest, come up with agitation, demonstrate, but it should be done in a peaceful way. Having said that, the issue of police reform is something ongoing. Like what the IGP just said, that the new SWAT that has been established is to be manned or to be dominated by people of good integrity and record within the police. But we cannot say end SARS, end SWAT. There is nowhere anywhere in the world that police does not have some of these tactical units, except we want to joke with our security, not only at the national level, even within the international fora. So the tactical approach, whereby the police believes that there must be a unit to check certain SSs, is a welcome development, and the youth should show high level of understanding in ensuring that this country actually belongs to everybody, and nobody wants Nigeria to be a doomed country.
Yes, Dr. Rauf, we thank you so much for that insight. We'll get back to the details as we progress in the program. Let's now get down to Lagos and then meet Ona Ehomu, security expert there, and let's hear your views. We started from the social media, going on and down to the streets, Lagos, Abuja, to other parts of the country. It's now 14 days running. What do you make out of it from Lagos?
Thank you very much for having me on your program this morning. Well, I think the manifestation of the NSAS movement, or the phenomenon, in fact, it's a phenomenon of the NSAS movement, I would like to look at from an organization behavior point of view. This is what Mark Segerman called back in 2003 the bunch of guys theory. Now, what is that talking about? It's talking about leaderless organizations. It's talking about organizations of this nature. You can't find a leader to talk to. You can't find someone to negotiate with, and yet they are crippling you. We saw that with the Spanish Apache wars with Geronimo, and now some of these postmodern terrorist groups, this is how they have evolved, and this is how they have survived. That is why, even though Osama bin Laden was killed many years ago by the U.S. forces, AQ, that's Al-Qaeda network, is still potent today. And that is why also, even though Mr. al-Baghdadi has been killed, ISWAP is still a potent threat. So what am I talking about? I'm saying that we are in for a very tough time this time around, because we are dealing with a leaderless organization. We are dealing with a bunch of guys. And what happens with bunch of guys is they just keep creeping demands. They keep making demands. They make one demand, you meet that, they make another one, you meet that, they make another one. And because of the nature of the organization, because it's a decentralized, it's a dispersed organization, there's nobody to hold, really. You cannot go out there and kill the leadership and assume that you have solved the problem. So that's where we have a problem today now in Nigeria, because there's nobody to talk to. The groups in Kwara will make a demand. Lagos appears to be the focal point of the whole thing. They will make their demands. They are getting funding from so many sources. They are getting resourced adequately. They are choosing their choke points. We thank God they have not turned violent yet. And I pray that the government gets the wisdom to take this thing down. That means work with these guys and stop it, because we don't want this to turn violent. If it turns violent, then it becomes a very big problem for us in this country. And let me tell you right now, we have too many problems, too many security flashpoints around the country to take on Nigerian youths. We don't need that. Let me just assure you right now. So if the authorities are listening, they should just pay attention to that. But there is a way of dealing with leaderless organizations.
All right. Dr. Ehomu, thank you very much. I want to bring in Dr. Kabiru Adamu to take off from where Dr. Ahomo just left off. I mean, he borrows the phrase bunch of guys. And some persons have indicated that there is some uniqueness about this protest. We haven't seen this type in recent decades, at least I haven't seen. We witnessed the various pro-democracy protests during the military era, and even during the incumbent Fourth Republic, we have seen protests. And you always have a lead organization, whether they are students or labor bodies or otherwise. But in this case, as he says, and as you also acknowledge, it's leaderless, it's formless, and yet, from what we have seen for almost 2 weeks now, potent. What are we faced with?
I would look at it from two angles. The obvious and then the latent. The obvious is what we're all talking about, an organic organization that appears leaderless. And, you know, we can go on and speak about that. But then that is why we have a state. The state has intelligence organizations that have the responsibility to go beyond the obvious and look at what is on the ground. Like the simple phrase, follow the money. And you would have an idea of what this organization is all about. The last time there was an attempt to follow the money, I was not too happy with the response. They attempted to block where the money was coming from. So I'm hoping that, you know, the intelligence arm of the government have done their work. In other words, use the resources at their disposal that you and I don't have, and identify what is behind, that's the backbone behind the movement. Yes, it may appear formless, it may appear leaderless, but no, the reality is that there is no movement that does not have some leadership, either at the formation level or at the institutionalization level. One of the things we missed at the beginning, and I've said this, is that we should have institutionalized the movement. That's at government level. By
you should have what?
Institutionalized it. In other words, call up some of the known leaders. There are known leaders. As an example, the guy who started the #EndSARS movement, he's to an extent a leader. But then I know others have crept in. As an example, the coalition of female, whatever, they've got this yellow logo on Twitter and other social media platforms. They're leaders because the 65 million plus that was generated, they generated that money. So, like I said, obvious, organic movement. But on the ground, there is definitely a leadership movement, and it is the responsibility of the intelligence organization to go down, deep down, identify these points, and then serve government with this type of information. Unfortunately, this is not the forum for us to discuss that.
Oh, well, Dr. Kabiru, thank you so much. Let's get down to my friend close to me here, and then see what you can add on to what he said. Okay. It started from, you know, having some few leaders in quotes, because they are now not there because they seem not to be talking anymore. They've already gotten it started, and it's moving. And monies are coming in from all over the place. They are having their field day, having to spend the night, cook, and have some pocket money and things like that. Do you see that as a pointer towards, you know, talking to some people, as it were?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we are a people, and I personally don't agree that there are no leaders to this movement. There are leaders, definitely. Just like what Dr. Kabir said, the intelligence agencies in this country should know who started these things. And as a government, yes, they should be spoken to. And let me call on the Nigerian youth that, if you remember very well, they started Not Too Young to Run. Yeah. So if they believe not too young to run, if they believe that we, the senior citizens in the country, have taken over, let them form a political party. Let this be a seed for them to start a movement that, look, anybody above the age of 40 should not rule Nigeria again, if that's what they want. But that's civility. Now, it should be done in such a way that let us as a people understand they are also responsible. But some of their actions, I mean, you cannot, just like what my brother from Lagos said, it is not true that they've not gone violent. They have gone violent. We saw what happened in Osun State. Yeah. The governor would have been killed. It's true. So even if that's not the intention of the people that started this thing, now criminals have joined, and it will continue. And people are sympathizing with them. But if they continue to block roads, if they continue to attack people, now there will be degeneration of law and order. And the government cannot sit by and watch that thing happen. So my call to them is, look, let them even appoint leaders to talk to the government. Or let government also covertly invite the leaders. And look, what do you want? We have a country. And look, if there is no peace and unity, you will not do anything. So I think we as a people should think deeply that violence cannot take us anywhere. And we have enough, just like what he said, we have enough flashpoints. And unfortunately also, we shouldn't polarize this issue. Now you find out that some of the utterances of our leaders, some religious leaders, are not helping matters. Some persons from some parts of the country are not also helping matters. We have one country. We need to have the country first. And for you to have the country, there should be unity. If you're not happy with the government of the day, wait for the time to come. This government removed a sitting government and came now. So if we as a people don't agree with Buhari and his government, let's wait 2023, we put out Buhari and his people. Then there is civility. But when you start to bring anarchy and then you tell us not too young to run, and you can't eat your cake and have it. You cannot want to rule us. You cannot want to lead. You cannot complain that the elders are not behaving well, and you also are not behaving well. In fact, as I said, if you've seen social media pictures of nudity, some are going about naked. We've seen that. So what's civility in that? What religion teaches that? What culture in this country teaches that? So if we as a people and parents also don't talk to our wards, that look, even if you have to protest, go to parks, go on the side of the road, demonstrate, say whatever you want to do, but allow free movement, allow people also, other people with other opinion. Because there are some, I have seen in Borno State, the governor said, look, bring these SARS people to fight Boko Haram.
He needs them.
Exactly. So which means it's not everybody that is saying that SARS should be disbanded. But it is true that, yes, there has been a lot of police brutality in this country. And then, like when the police came with SWAT, and they're also saying they don't want SWAT. In every country, there are units that take care of violent crimes. So what are we talking about? Are we saying now that the criminals should have field day? No. So, but I think just like what the lecturer from Police Academy said, these reforms have already started. We have graduates now coming out as cadet ASPs. So if we build on that, and I think the country will come out clean.
I want to return very briefly to Dr. Onaihomo. Dr. Onaihomo, I wanted to respond to the views expressed by both Dr. Kabiru Adamu and Honorable Aliyu with regard to what you earlier said. These are a bunch of guys who appear to have no leadership. They've made their own counterpoints. I take along with what they have said, the view also that is out there, and indeed what is perceived, what is easily observable, that the protesters appear to have some efficient organization. That's the address systems that they have. The fact that, say, in Lagos, for instance, at the Admiralty Toll Plaza, you look at the setup, and it takes quite some level of governance, to get that going. And in other parts of the country where they have been demonstrating or protesting, you also find that form of organization. So what's your response to these issues that, well, fine, the leaders may not be apparent, but they are indeed behind the scene?
Yes, I think Dr. Kabir said it well, where he said that there is an obvious dimension to this, and there's a latent or a hidden dimension to this. The obvious dimension is that we have high performance disruption, as it were, a disruptive, leaderless, high-performing group. High-performing in the sense that for example, I fell victim of it. On Thursday, I had to go through Ikoyi to go to work, which is not my normal route. I should go straight on what's it called, through the Admiralty Circle toll gate, but I had to go through Ikoyi Link Bridge. And, in fact, Thursday, Friday, it was protest response. That's the mood I was in, along with my organization and everything. So what I'm trying to say is, that's an obvious part of it. They are well organized. They have music. They have food. They have prayer groups. They have Jumat service and all that. So that is all obvious. But now the latency of it is that they are not showing us their leaders. Usually you will say, oh, this is our leader, talk to our leader. They are not showing us their leader. So that's why I'm telling you that there is a concept like that. That's how the jihadi groups work. I even referred to this in my recent book on Boko Haram. That's how the jihadi groups work. They work in a cellular fashion, in little cells. They are everywhere. They are dispersed. I've talked about dispersal. They are decentralized, and they don't need anybody's permission to strike. That's if you were talking about the bad guys. Now, these are good guys. These are just protesting youths, and they are saying we need for our nation to be improved. But I'm telling you, I'm just giving you, that's why I said I'm coming from an OB, organizational behavior viewpoint, just to give you what their mechanism is so that you understand their thinking and also what kind of effect they're going to have if this thing is not resolved in time. Because my point is resolution. And I think that's the topic today. You said the way forward. We need to resolve this thing, but we need to understand it, have a deeper understanding. Because right now, I hear quite a lot of superficial talk. Not on this set. I think you have very good guests here, excellent guests. But I hear a lot of superficial talk on social media everywhere. So I want to take us back. Let's go to resolution. Let's go to what the Senate President said yesterday after meeting with Mr. President. He said the youth should give government time to achieve or at least to carry out some of their demands. And I think at the start of your program, you put up all the things that the government has done in terms of specifically addressing the 5 for 5 issues. And I think we should also kind of now persuade the youth that, look, it is dishonorable of you to set goals and then start moving the goals. You can't move the goalposts in the middle of a game. You've already given us 5 for 5. Let us deal with those 5 for 5. This is a system. This is a social system. It's not only about you. In fact, like the Honorable said just now, in some parts of the country, people are even hailing SARS and saying they love SARS. I think particularly in the Northeast where we have that conflict ongoing. So having said that, I just want to say, look, let us be strategic and let us be creative. Let us not use intuitive mechanisms. That's my problem. Let's not do it the way we used to do it in those old days. It's not going to work. Let us be very strategic. Let us be very creative. Let us use structured analytical thinking. Let us do some good intelligence analysis and then go forward to solve this problem. There are solutions, and I agree with Mr. Kabir. We cannot discuss everything on air. There are solutions, and there are ways to solve, even to cure the problems of leaderless organizations.
Thank you, Dr. Ehumu, for that insight. And I believe, as you said, there are good guests here, which of course you are one of them. We thank you so much for that, commendation. Let's talk to Dr. Rauf Zakariya of the Department of Political Science, Nigerian Police Academy. You are with them, with the police, and rather talking to the police and then teaching the police how to be civil and the rest of them. But that's just by the way. Let's look at what he said. And maybe you can add on that, talking about the protesters now setting goals and then shifting the goalposts in the middle of the game. Do you see that as appropriate? If not, I mean, what should be done, and what should they have done really much earlier if they think there are so many things to do or to say much after NSAS protest?
Yeah, thank you very much. Like what is said, when you have a demand, basically they started with 5 demands, which the government has actually met. Then in any public policy, there is what we call policy agenda. Then there is what we call policy priority. Now, the protest came up with NSAS, which we should believe is the priority of the demonstration. And having disbanded SARS, SARS was disbanded as a result of directive from the president. That is to tell you that the yearnings, the protests, the claims in terms of the voices of the youths have been heard and actions have been taken. Nevertheless, NSAS happen to be the demand in terms of, oh, this is our priority. We have seen a lot of brutality. We have seen ways whereby some of our youths have become unsafe as a result of their encounter with the SARS. And we should not forget that even the police service commissions have actually come up with 37 members of the SARS dismissed. Now, others are facing different judicial interrogation, different human rights commissions have come on board to actually coming into the game. Now, when you are now shifting from NSAS to some other issues, youth unemployment, we need good road, we need all sorts of infrastructural facilities. Of course, all those things, they are genuine agitations, but they should not redirect the focus of why the protests actually started on board. And as I've said earlier on, there were some other agitations which this tag of NSAS actually become like the topical, whereby there are some other subtopics coming under it, which I think, as I've said earlier on, cannot be done overnight. And that is why the reform is something that is being progressive, is something that must be consistent. And what we do at the Nigeria Police Academy is to ensure that some of the younger ones that are interested in joining the police service, they should be well educated in a way that they will become more responsive as far as our society is concerned. So if the youth now say, okay, we have handed SARS, as you have said, the 5 for 5 demands have been met, then let's move ahead with some other agitation. Then we need to come to the table, apply what we call negotiation. You have to negotiate. Like what the Speaker of House of Reps said yesterday and the Senate President, this thing is not about just protesting, keep sleeping on the street on a daily basis. All your leaders should come on board, or your representative, engage the government, negotiate. Then some of those things you have highlighted in terms of beyond NSAS, how do we look into it? And government, on its part, has been trying in giving attention to some of those things, but maybe they might not be enough, of course. Then there must be room for improvement. But we can't just say NSAS, all Nigerians' problem must be resolved within one day. That cannot happen. It cannot happen anywhere in the world. There is no developed country that became developed on a day. So it's a matter of gradual process. And as I've said earlier on, the policy agenda, in terms of this is our demand, the priority should be given to what they have demanded for, which government has attended to. Other blurring issues coming on board, that can be addressed using the formula of what we call negotiation. You come on board. You don't need to hide. If there are not in the agendas, they should come up with genuine agitations and let their representatives come on board, meet the government and the police, government stakeholders, and some of those issues can be addressed effectively without any unnecessary chaos or resorting to violence.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Zakaria. Dr. Kabir Adamu, I mean, some experts have indicated, and I think that the view has also been touched on here briefly today, that the protests so far are not amenable to kinetic resolution. But in being strategic, and that's a part of the way forward, it will be useful to identify institutions or persons or legal persons to whom the youths will listen. Are we in a position to do that just yet? Because you find that, I mean, some of the music stars who ordinarily will be persuaders, hidden or open persuaders, have also been part of the protest. So are we sufficiently identifying key influencers for the youth so that we say, okay, these are the persons to whom the messages can be channeled, rather than open broadcasts or open appeals and solicitations?
Kingsley, let me play the devil's advocate here, with your permission. For a youth who has gone through the four walls of a university, He's got his undergraduate degree, he's got his postgraduate degree, and probably for the past 10 years, he's been out there looking for a job. And remember, I mentioned that we're talking of a population between 40 and 70 million who are in this category, unfortunately. Some of them are underemployed, some of them are disenchanted about one thing or the other. And so, if you encounter such a situation, the language that you speak, it's very, very important. Because the person is already drowning. And how you respond to him, he asks himself, okay, I'm already drowning, and you are telling me not to come out on the street. What's the point of you telling me not to come out? I'm drowning already. So that's very important. Strategic communication. In the last 14 days, I think we can improve on that. The
Vice President offered an apology.
I use the word strategic communication. Apology is good, and it's honorable. It speaks of someone who understands the plight. Empathy. I mean, there are three things you do in a crisis situation, because we're in a crisis, whether we want to admit it or not. It's a crisis, and we should have looked into our books and see what are the crisis response mechanisms that we have. Unfortunately, I haven't seen enough of that. In criminology, there are two ways you respond to social movements like this. Either you use repression or you use concession. Now, it appears at the beginning we started the concession mechanism. Some youth leaders were identified. I've seen the Inspector General of Police meeting with Davido as an example. I've seen him meeting with Sega Link. I can't remember Sega Link's full name. He's the person who originated the NSAS hashtag. So those are all good movements. But then from a whole of government perspective, what kind of strategy, crisis response strategy have we, done? The Minister of Youth and Sports, as an example, and then other youth leaders that over time, both at the political level, and then especially since the origin of this in the southwest of the country, youth leaders from the southwest should have been by now, government should have identified a communication strategy that would involve empathy, that would involve confidence building, and then more importantly, hope. Because if you can give these three things to the youths, then they would calm down. But where, for instance, yes, you've offered an apology, but then what comes after the apology? How do you take care of this 70 million disenchanted youths? They look at their future and ask themselves, remember, I'm playing the devil advocate here.
I understand. You're an angel regardless.
They're asking themselves, how do I come out of this? I want to have a nice house. I want probably to have the 13 or 18 million naira salary that the parliamentarian is enjoying. And then at the end of the day, he tells himself, there is no way I can get this because of what the system has created. So whatever language we're sending has to be a language that addresses this core disenchantment by the youth. Unfortunately, in the last 14 days, I haven't had that language.
I don't know. Kabir, thanks a lot for your perspective. I mean, elaborate. But we have seen pockets of this kind of strategic response. Let's take Lagos as an example. The state governor, Sanwo-Olu, took the demands of the protesters to President Muhammadu Buhari, and the report was widely televised and broadcast. Sanwo-Olu, governor of Lagos, has also visited the family of one or two of the protesters, who unfortunately, lost their lives. And I think we have seen one or two other examples in some other states. But elsewhere, things just appear mostly to be getting out of hand. That's why I was asking about, look, to whom will these youths listen to at this time? I want to bring in Honorable Aliu. We have seen examples in parts of Lagos, for instance, during the course of the protest, where some politicians came and the protesters just sent them away. They said, we don't want to see you.
Well, that's true. In fact, some of the politicians that came really, I'm very happy with the way they were treated, because I don't think we should put politics into it, even if there is, political undertone. But the Vice President's apology, I think it's right in the right direction. And let me also, on behalf of elderly, I am 60 years old, so I'm an old man in this country. So let me, on behalf of 60 and above, apologize, to the Nigerian youth, where, without conceding, where they feel we have done badly. But this is a system that did not start 5 years ago. When we speak about the police, I want each and every one of us to visit a police barracks in his village. In his village. You will see the condition of the police. This didn't start 5 years ago. This started over time. And just like what one of the speakers said, we have a lot of problems in this country. Now, this is also an eye-opener for the government and for anybody that wants to govern, that you cannot take people for granted, that you cannot just do things anyhow, that you cannot be in government because, look, those in authority hold the government in trust on our behalf. So you cannot be a president or a minister or a governor and talk to people anyhow. So part of the strategic communication that Dr. Kabir is saying that, look, including Mr. President, should come out and speak to the people. There's nothing wrong with that. The president should come out and probably apologize. It's politics. It's also he is leading us. He's our president. Now, 70%, as my brother here said, 70% of the country are angry, and he is our president. So I expect Mr. President to also, within this period, to speak to the nation about these things, because so that the people also believe that, look, we have a listening president. Now he did the first step by disbanding SARS, speaking briefly. Probably now other things that people want here, that look, okay, we're going to do A, B, C, D within the next 1 or 2 weeks. These are the kind of communication that people want to hear. And also the party in government, the APC, should also talk to their youth leaders across the country. Speak to the youth, talk to them what your government is doing, tell them what the government will do, apologize where necessary. There are things that, yes, this government needs to apologize to people. Certainly, there are certain things, some mistakes done, but, you know, so when people feel that the government in party is arrogant, so sometimes these kind of problems will come. So I think we as a people, I said, I, on behalf of all that people, apologize to the Nigerian youth that they should please see reason, not allow this thing to degenerate, because we've seen pictures on social media. Some of these artists also shown, whether it's true, taking drugs. I've seen that. It's all over. So what are they trying to teach us? Are they trying to teach other youth that, look, to take drugs is good, or to be rude, or to be insultive? No. So as a people, the youth have their role to play. Now they've kicked us. They've shown us that, look, you, these old men, you need to get up and start working. So we've had you. We're going to work. We're going to improve. So give us a chance to improve.
Dr. Ona Ekomu, let's look at what Honorable Aliyu said vis-a-vis, government's, efforts in the past 1 or 2 weeks about this NSAS protest issue. Looking at the chronology of the protesters or the government's response to the initial and subsequent demands by the NSAS protesters, are they not responsive in view of the fact that these things didn't start overnight or in the past 5 years, as Aliyu said, Honorable Aliyu said. When you talk about the situation of the police and their welfare, you look at the educational sector, you look at the employment problem, and a host of other issues which are being brought or put forward by the protesters. These are not things that came up just overnight. And by asking the government to really address them immediately or within a very short time, maybe asking for too much. What's your take on that?
Thank you very much, sir. I didn't get your name, but I'll ask for it later. I think my issue here is that we have to understand, we have to have an organic understanding of the issue at hand. That is why I said we should do some structural analytical thinking. Let us do some deep thinking, not surface thinking like we are used to doing in this country when we have important issues. That's why we always solve the wrong problems. We commit what we call the error of the third kind in research design, probability of solving the wrong problem, which is what we usually do. That's why our problems remain in this country. They don't go away. But that's another story for another day. However, the NSAS hashtag is a parable of many things that are wrong in the country. That's just what you've said. I say just a parable, and that's why the youths are cashing in on it, and they are saying, "Listen, well, this is our voice. We found our voices. We're going to speak, and we are speaking." And so that is where it is. That's just an anatomy of the problem. Now, having said that, the issue becomes how do we address it? So we need to bring out our first 11 to address this problem, not our last 11. And again, I keep saying, don't resort to intuitive methods. What worked yesterday won't work today. You are dealing with a new animal today, a new problem. You can, I think Honorable Kingsley there said that this is the first time he's seen anything like this in this country. Me too, first time, and I am older than the gentleman there, the Honorable. I'm 66. So I also join him in apologizing to the youth for the way we've misrun this country. But that's another story for another day. We'll sort that out. However, I just like to say that, yes, he's right. It's kind of a label for many things that are wrong. Education, unemployment. I think Kabir gave a figure of 40 million unemployment or unemployed or underemployed youths, and so on and so forth. So we have so many things that are wrong, so many problem areas here and there. And so that's why I'm saying we need to be also very wise in dealing with this. We need to be wise in how we approach it and bring it to resolution. But I think the most important thing we can do on this program, at least, is problem analysis. Just analyzing what the problem is, what the issues are, like we have been doing for the past hour and some change, and so that the government can take it from there and then find creative solutions. But I think Honorable Aliyu has also said that Mr. President should come out and address us. I think I've heard that in a lot of protests around the country. I think he made an address sometime, I don't know, but I think he should come out on prime time on all the channels led by NTA, and maybe that, the normal thing he does, 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. address, and make an address to the nation and tell the youths that, he can feel them, and let them hear from him directly, not from, all these other officials. And certainly I want to also advise that certain people who are not very good at communication shouldn't be put there to be communicating on behalf of the government, because all they are doing is adding fuel to this crisis, and they're providing more glue for the youths to bind together and act in unison, which is not in the interest of Nigeria. And certainly we need to get back to work. Some of us have to work, and we are begging the youth to please do like the Senate President said, give the government, there's a time for protest to end, and I think this is a good time for it to end. They've made a point. Give the government some room to act on these things, and then let's see, if we won't get a better nation. But I think I praise their vision, I praise their issue for at least calling for a better Nigeria. I was young a long time ago, and I met a very good country because my people provided for us, and we need to provide for a better country for the youths who are coming behind us, so that they will have a good country to inherit. That's, the long and short of it, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ona Ekwomo, old man, on the program today. Gentlemen, we're going to have to take a short break. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
A new edition of TV Guide is out, featuring great personalities from all walks of life. Expository interview with a young TV presenter who shows passion on what she does, Morayo Afolabi Brown of TVC. Pick a copy of this compendium of mind-blowing stories and get abreast with issues as regards media convergence, leadership, health, star profiles, star programs, fashion, sports, human angle stories, and lots more. Meet some media professionals within our space who have paid their dues in no small ways. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
welcome back, and I still good morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. Let's bring in Dr. Zakaria one more time. Dr. Zakaria, as part of charting the way forward and therefore potentially content of messaging, there is a key issue here which has been highlighted several times, and that has to do with trust deficit. Fine, you say you're going to reform the police, and some of the protesters have said, look, we've heard that before. SARS was supposed to have been reorganized on 3 or 4 occasions. Nothing actually happened. We talked about the state of police barracks. I recall that former President Goodluck Jonathan made a surprise visit once to the Ikeja Police College at Ikeja, and they saw the rot at the barracks and indeed the entire environment. And that college sits on prime land, which is Ikeja JRA. And on you can go, and the people are saying, look, you've made these promises in the past. Nothing much appeared to have changed. How can we begin to bridge that trust gap, or that replenish the hope of the young men and women to say, look, we are in for a real change this time around, and life will be more abundant for all of us?
Thank you very much. You have made a very good point in the area of trust deficit, or what we call political cynicism. Because when there is no trust on the part of the government and even the masses relationship, that's where all sorts of things come on board. Like this issue of SARS. Several reports, several times, said SARS, okay, have been disbanded. But later on, some of the SARS men were still on the road, accusing people unnecessarily and some of the brutality. But this time around, I think from the presidential directive, it actually indicated that this protest is something that everybody should be taking serious. And the way forward, based on what you have said, is the fact that how do we now bridge the gap in terms of the people, the masses generally, the youth, elderly, whosoever, and the government. Once there is no trust, then there is nothing coming out from the government, even from the youth. From the two sides, nobody will want to trust each other. And by way of trust, what government can do in ensuring that is simple, through good governance. Let me give you an instance. We, from the academic point of view, we have seen the synergy between the current ASU strike and the youth protests. Now, some of the youths, they have been at home. Coronavirus came on board, lockdown, and people have been at home for more than 5 to 6 months. The timing now that, okay, we are trying to open up the society, most of the youths are expected to be in the school, those in the camp for NYC service, those that are even working among them, they should be in their various offices. But dragging the issue of ASU, federal government agreement, that thing is not also helping matter. So it is high time for government to actually ensure that this ASU federal government face-off is resolved. If that is resolved, I can tell you that we can see a drastic reduction in terms of the demonstration, mobilization on the street. Because largely, you can see some of those youth we are seeing, they are students, educated, the way they speak very politely. Why those that we believe they have been misbehaving, they are just insignificant. But if the government can engage them, okay, we have resolved the issue of ASU, everybody should go back to class. We have resolved the issue of unemployment to some extent. It can be resolved in a day, but to some extent, we can see that government is coming up with different policies. And like what Honorable said, communication matters. We have seen a lot of youth programs from the Ministry of Youth and Sport Development. We have seen a lot of policy coming from the Ministry of Humanitarian. But the youth, because they don't have that trust, I don't want to apply. Once I apply, if you don't know Honorable Farouk, you don't know any of the power that be, you cannot get it. That is to tell you that that trust, that is what we need to actually work on. And once there is a trust, the youth will actually understand that this is a government that cares. Like some of us that we have traveled, I could recall when we were in Asia, the youth, as far as they are concerned, they believe that the best person to talk to whenever you need to ask certain questions is the police. So they have seen the police as a friendly man, as their neighbor that they can actually trust. But in Nigeria, once you are driving on the street and you see police, sometimes even the appearance, you get scared that, oh, those people, they want to disturb me again. It shouldn't be like that. If I miss my way, maybe my map is not working, I should be able to talk to my policeman. Please, how can I locate my timer? How can I do this? So that friendly approach, that responsiveness, that interrelationship should be there. Police should always be a friend, of course.
Are you teaching that now in the academy?
Of course, that's what we have been teaching. Like what Honorable said, no.
But is this sinking?
It is. It's a matter of time. Okay. Some of our products, the cadets that have graduated, they are almost everywhere now. But with time, we are going to be seeing some of those reform. Most of the younger guys you can find in police stations now as commissioned ASP. Of course, they are well sufficiently educated. They have been trained better off. The way they address things, of course, quite different from the traditional cargo. Nevertheless, we cannot just face out the traditionalists, quote and unquote, because in every revolution, it is all about paradigm shift. It's something that is gradual. But once the issue of trust is resolved, then the youth, everybody will be able to see the fact that, oh, government is doing things and the communication is getting down to everybody. So police remains a friend and should always remain a friend of the people. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Zakaria. Let me ask Kabiru Adamu this question. He gave a pointer in his response talking about, in summary, that an idle mind is a devil's workshop. And the lockdown is almost over, and people have started getting to the streets, to their workplaces, to schools, and the rest of them. And he mentioned ASU. He mentioned going back to school. He mentioned going back to work, and so many other steps that can be taken in order to reduce the intensity of this protest and find a solution to it. We're talking about NSAS, the way forward. Do you see these issues or these strategies as potent enough as government talk to them in trying to solve this problem?
Unfortunately, no.
Right.
These are, I would say, operational issues at the very bottom of the ladder. There are issues that are at the top of the ladder, and we've identified some of them.
Yeah.
We've talked about empathy, strategic communication that involves three basic things. Empathy, which the Vice President began by apologizing, and making them feel that you feel their plight, you understand what they are going through, that humility. And I emphasize the point, and Honorable Farouk also did, the whole of government should do that, not just an arm of the government. There are three arms to our government, and then at the federal, at state level, the whole of government. Because at the end of the day, it is our country at stake. You cannot deal with 40 to 70 million people. That's a force that you need to understand and respond to in a manner that they will feel you are responding to them. So strategic communication that involves empathy, that involves confidence building, and then more importantly, at the end of the day, you have to give them hope. They gave an example, and it's for me, it's instructive. My job is risk management.
Yeah.
So I identify the threats and then analyze those threats to bring out the risk. They were able to generate roughly in Naira at the last time they opened their account, 65 million Naira. And then, £10,000, $10,000 thereabout, and then it trickled down with other currencies. And look at what they've been able to achieve with 65 million Naira. Now, they looked at Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, and the billions of Naira that ministry said it released in palliative, and raised the question, who among them, the 40 plus 70 million, benefited from that? And frankly, probably none of them, because at the time I checked.
There are no school children now. There was a school feeding program that went on during the lockdown. No, it was not, because we had a minister here.
Yeah, Kingsley, on a serious note, accountability, transparency, those are confidence-building mechanisms. And, perhaps time would allow us to mention, it's my field, it's security, and the area of police reform. The Buhari administration has done tremendously well. Perhaps in the course of the discussion, if time would allow, I'll mention some of those things that...
No, go ahead, we're very pressed.
Three things that I will mention that the Buhari administration introduced. The anti-torture bill, very good. The review of police order 237, which was done by the Inspector General of Police. Before that review, the policeman could use force, and the delineation of that force was absent. But with that review, he now knows that there is a limit. The principles of necessity and proportionality were introduced in that review. I don't know if my co-discussant can talk a bit more about that, but that's very instructive. Then the Police Act 2020 that was passed not too long ago, and the mother of it all is the Police Reform, Police Trust Act.
Police Trust Fund
Act 2019. Now, these things that I've mentioned, they provide a veritable platform for police reform. The revised National Strategy 2019, where we're promised a paradigm shift from state-centric approach to security to a human-centric approach to security. Those are platforms that the Buhari administration has provided beyond any other administration before now for police reform. And I use the word platform.
Yes.
And I emphasize that word, platform. Now, how do we operationalize these platforms? That is what I expect in the coming days for all the ministers, actually, because there are about 27 to 29 MDAs within the security sector. They need to come out with an implementation framework that they would communicate to Nigerians. Look, we have these platforms, and this is how we intend to implement them, so that Nigerians can feel the impact of this. I know some work has started. Community policing is a good example, because how do you democratize policing? It's by community policing. So that in my village, in Dogondaji as an example, when I go there and 100 bandits attempt to attack the village, I know who to call upon to respond. Those are so very, very good platforms that need to be operationalized.
Is there, still with you very briefly now, is there sufficient understanding of these reform platforms and legs by the associated MDAs, so that when they are speaking, they are not speaking at cross purposes, but rather is reinforcement of messaging? We always have that silo mentality.
The Ministry of Planning, Budget and Planning, I think, has that responsibility. The idea is every time we're in the budget cycle right now, so they are supposed to look at the budget submissions, and with the justification for whatever content of that budget ties into this policy framework by government. So yes, I think there is that understanding, but then again, the Parliament needs to also do that as MDAs come to defend their budgets.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kabiru. Let's now take or hear what Nigerians are saying about this discussion. They've been coming along since we started. I think some tweets have come in. Let's go through them one after the other. Omo Bolohan Babs, hashtag Obenizar, says, every agitation ends on the table. Dialogue, he says. It's better to Joe than to war. The protesters should know when to call it quits, and they've listed their demands. Government has listened and started acting on it. They should let it get to when people's daily survival is further threatened.
All right, Dele Jack Solomon, a process needs to be set in motion to holistically investigate allegations against errant police officers found to have abused their power, with a view to ensuring that justice is done, villains are punished, and victims compensated. Without this, it will be difficult to pacify many Nigerian youth.
Uchalo Sunday says federal government must match words with actions. They have promised to implement the protesters' demands, and immediate response should be taken to promptly halt the agitations of the youths.
Chris Simeon, now we should be careful on how we handle critical issues in this country, because one day we will account for it. Many Nigerians have lost their loved ones during the protests. May their souls rest in peace.
Festus Akim Boyewa says police must be made accountable for misconduct. The continual alleged shielding of police from responsibility is one of the reasons why many Nigerians feel that our police can't be reformed. The Police Service Commission must be given real power to address that.
Law Alpha said the Inspector General of Police has disbanded SARS on the instructions of President Muhammadu Buhari, and yet the protests are expanding. Government should rise up and take measures to contain the situation. What are the measures?
Well, end SARS, it is high time for the government to put an end to this. Imagine forcing commuters to contribute to end SARS. If you refuse, they damage your vehicle or collect your valuables. That is from Adamu Sheshi Kacha.
You know, Sir Idris, the government should immediately implement the demands of the protesters. Lack of trust between Nigerians and government fuels the protest despite disbandment of SARS. Again, government should meet the demands of varsity workers so that students can go back to school.
Leo Fadaka has a very short one here, and it says a holistic reform of the police in line with many previous panel recommendations is the way to go.
Now, this is from Idibas. It says, this is not a movement on some bunch of guys. This is a clamor for a new Nigeria. We are demanding a new, credible, accountable system.
Ali Broza says SARS has been brutally operating in some parts of the nation, but the protest is turning into something else, so much that attacking government officials and saying Buhari should resign, I think this is not NSAS.
All right, those are the tweets that we can accommodate in the meantime. Before we come back to our guests in the studios, just one point that I would like the security analysts and experts in our midst. Dr. Onayehoma, this question is coming to you. We have seen the ramifications just so far of the protest from NSAS, which has now become, as it were, a metaphor for other demands. But we have also seen, I have read some reports, how credible I wouldn't know, but I'm asking the question hypothetically. Dr. Kabir Adamu says, look, we're in a crisis situation. Are we seeing an escalation of the protests into cyberspace, and therefore a real hazard that we all face in terms of either our e-governance or just pretty day-to-day business? We are seeing some claims by either hackers or otherwise. What needs to be done urgently in that regard as well?
Thank you very much, sir. Well, I think the cyber now, those messages that are going out via Twitter and all the messaging that's going out there, that's number one. And then secondly, this is why it is a leaderless organization, and this is why we are not able to find out who to talk to, because much of the trafficking, much of the communication between the protesters is being done in the cyber space, if you may, the dark web, so that's where the real communication is going. The government is not able to find out or to, in fact, just immediately see what is going on. Let's put it this way, the government is blind to the methods that are being used. So I think we are dealing with a very potent force here. I think it is a conflict, like Mr. Adamu, Dr. Adamu has said, Kabir. It is a major conflict. And I'm trying to say, let us see if we can end this conflict at its incipient stage. Because if it becomes an advanced stage conflict, then there could be outcomes that not even Dr. Ona can predict right now. So yes, I believe that there's quite a bit of cyber component to it, particularly in the dark web. I believe the country was, the office of the NSA was working recently on updating the national cybersecurity policy. They should better hurry up with that update because right now they are, way behind the people who are using that region, that platform to communicate and organize on this protest. So I really think that there's a need to kind of have a cyber army, go wade into that terrain and see what they can find and see if they can find a way to deconstruct the crisis from that point of view.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ehonu. Let's start some close-up on this program because we're heading towards the close of this program. Let's see how we'll be able to have some final thoughts on this and give some good pointers. Honorable Aliu, yours has always been the fact that the government has done much. The youth should really, come out and look at this and appreciate what government has done. But you also mentioned some silent issues which are very alien to this protest and to this country and to this culture, talking about how the conduct is going on and some other things like that. What do you say as you make up your final thought? What do you say as the role of the public or the parents in this regard in trying to assuage the protesters?
Well, as parents, we should all talk to our wards. We should all talk to our kids and let them know that we've heard them and we identify with them. But then they should be responsible. They should be civil, because this brigandage will not take us anywhere. Between America and North Korea, they are talking behind the scene. Israel and Palestinians are talking. So no matter what you do on the street, you have to come to negotiating table. You know, so I think they should give peace a chance. They should give the government opportunity, I mean, maybe 1-2 weeks to see whether the government is serious or not. You know, but then, you know, as a whole, I said this is a wake-up call to all of us. That look, you cannot take people for granted anymore. That we need to be held accountable, and the people are telling the government that look, we will hold you accountable. Even if you are not the ones that started the problem, but you are the people in power now. So don't come and tell us that we came just 5 years ago. No, you are in power now. You should address our problems. But, you know, so from the government side of view, government should take responsibility about all the bad things that happen in this country. The government should own up that, look, we as a government, because the government is a continuum, this government should take responsibility for the failure of everything in this country, as of now, because the government of the day is the one in power. Now, in return, the youth and other citizens should give the government a chance to see whether will the government act fast. If the government does not act fast, people should come back to the street. But for now, you know, coming back to the street in a civilized way, in a better way, in such that, look, without blocking the road, if you go to like Tinubu Square in Lagos, is it Tinubu Square? That old square, you know, in Lagos. If you don't obstruct the street, you can.
How can you protest if you don't obstruct the street?
No, you.
Because that's where the CBN is there.
Okay, but
because there's a fountain there. You're going to be inside the fountain.
Okay, maybe
you can say Tafawa Balewa Square.
Exactly, that's what I wanted to say. Tafawa Balewa, you know. Yes. But wherever you're going to demonstrate or, you know, show your anger, please don't obstruct other people, because your demands, you know, where your demands end, somebody else's, you know, starts.
Honorable Leo, thank you very much. Dr. Kabir Adamu is talked about governmental responsibility, and we've seen a part of that already emerging from the Vice President in pathetic apology. But somehow, in some of the messages that one has also encountered in the course of this protest, it appears that it's also being framed as a generational conflict. I mean, there was one T-shirt emblazoned on it was, their generation says off the mic. My generation says Sorosoke. I hope you know what that means. Yeah, so in which case, of course, Honorable and Dr. Ehomo, they have offered apologies as well to say, look, we have tended to have disappointed our youth. What should the older generation also be saying to the youth, rather than say, look, come off the street? What kind of responsible action would you like to see, positively too?
I've mentioned three things, and I'll just repeat them. One of them is, we've talked about strategic communication, empathy in it, and then confidence building, and then hope. We cannot, and I want to emphasize this, please, we cannot think we understand the mindset of the youth. I thought I did. I'm probably the youngest person here. But then by engaging with the youth recently, because I've got a workforce and I've got the youth population in that workforce, I asked them over and asked them some critical questions. We need to do that. The mindset of today's youth is influenced by a lot of things, especially in the social media. The kind of dressing that Honorable Farouk mentioned, these are dressings, unfortunately, that are common today, and that is what the youth wants. Now, if that is what they want, we cannot sit from our position and say, this is what you should do. As parents, we have that responsibility. But then by the time they reach a certain age, they can take their decision. So in other words, we need to understand the mindset of the youth. There are engagement in governance should include the youth population. And I think that's an area that perhaps in the course of future conversations we need to explore. How are we engaging with the youth? Do we understand? Look at Abuja as an example. I've asked myself this question. Apart from the old stadium, where do we have a sporting facility? I grew up in a community where there was sporting facility. It engaged the youth. When they were free, they had time. Today's youths are on the social media. And the kind of information and influencing that goes on in the social media, it's scary to me from where I sit. So we need to understand that, and we need to respond to it as quickly as possible.
We thank you so very much, Dr. Kabir, for your insights and thoughts. We hope and pray that these are going to really sink down to the youth and, of course, the authorities concerned. Zakaria, it's our pleasure. You've been with us. We thank you so much for coming along, and so also Honorable Farouk Aliyu. Dr. Ehonum, it's a pleasure that you've been with us. We thank you so much for what you've already contributed to this program. We hope and pray that these are going to really sink down to all stakeholders in this protest, and so NSAS ends immediately. That's Good Morning Nigeria for you today. I am Yusuf Nadab Usman.
And I'm Kingsley Osadala. Good Morning Nigeria returns tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, have a nice day.